Good to go?
Not quite.
Okay.
We should be now.
Okay, excellent. And for everyone scoring, George did post the various rosters and his cell phone in the chat. So if there are any problems, if someone's disconnected and has trouble reconnecting, go ahead and take a moment, write down George's number so that we can communicate and make sure that's figured out. All right, getting started. Is the plaintiff ready to proceed? Do we have lead counsel for plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And for the defense, is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Before we get into introductions and housekeeping matters, why don't we get the oaths out of the way? If all the team members would turn their cameras on. Okay. Raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Everyone's shaking their head yes? Good. All right, and now I'll have all the witnesses come on camera, please. All right, witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? See everybody shaking their heads yes. Do any of the teams have any family members, teachers, or attorney coaches in the rooms with them? For the plaintiff, if you could answer yes or no, and same for the defense.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Then we can skip that oath. We'll go to the scoring panelists. If you can turn your cameras on, please. And Ms. Campbell. There you are. All right, if you raise your right hands, please. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? All right. Good. We're ready to go. Thank you all very much. All right, so let's start with the plaintiffs. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and your witnesses, please.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Jasmine Machievich, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and the plaintiff's closing statement. At this time, I would like to request permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Danielle McGowan. Today I will be delivering the direct examination of Carson Durst as well as the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Benjamin Okan, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, as well as the opening for the plaintiff team. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would now like to ask permission for my witnesses, plaintiff's witnesses, to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Cesar Aguirre. I will be portraying Dakota Weirs for you today.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Daniel Jones, and I'll be portraying Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Tanner Bertram, and I will be portraying Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you. And as we go through the trial, I'm assuming you guys will change the name of the witness each time.
Yes.
Feel free to remind me of that so that we don't go too fast and so that the name makes it on the screen before the examination begins, okay?
Of course. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. For the defense, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Annie Entner. I will conduct the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Carson Durst. May my co-counsel be permitted to introduce themselves?
Please.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Caitlin Clint for the defense. I will be direct examining Lake Doncourt and cross-examining Dakota Weirs, as well as delivering the opening statement.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Christopher Dudzik for the defense. I will be conducting direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, as well as delivering the closing argument. May my witnesses be permitted to introduce themselves.
Please.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Sophia Wideneck, and I am Skylar.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Mason Malters, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Peter Heitman, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any preliminary matters for the plaintiff?
Your Honor, because this is occurring, sorry about that. Your Honor, because this is occurring virtually, we would like to request permission to share exhibits on the screen so that Your Honor and the witnesses do not have to refer to them themselves.
That'll be fine.
And we would also like to request permission to reserve any time left after the plaintiff's closing statement for rebuttal.
Okay. Any other preliminary matters for the plaintiff?
No other preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anything for the defense?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. Very well. Are we all ready to proceed? We can start with, would the plaintiff like to give an opening statement this morning?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
This case is all about a high school kid whose dreams of becoming a world-class piano player were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma caused by the defendant's product, Lush Fertilizer. Dakota Weirs is 18 years old. He works for a school. He gets good grades, and he's an active member of his community. You'll learn that he was a member of the National Honor Society, president of a high school student government, and even found the time to volunteer at a local homeless shelter. You'll learn that more than anything else, Dakota loved to play the piano, and that when he was just 7 years old, he used to sit on his grandfather's knees, learning about each sound each key made and how each key would feel under his fingers, learning how each chord would come together. He started to take lessons soon after his grandfather passed away and got to a point where he loved it so much that he practiced several hours a day. He dreamed of becoming a world-class piano player, and you'll learn that he was well on his way to making those dreams a reality. He had even received a full-ride scholarship to Juilliard, one of the finest music conservatories in the world. His dreams were just at his fingertips until a year ago when things began to take a turn. Just before he was about to leave for Juilliard, he began to feel sick all the time. He experienced rapid weight loss and was tired constantly. He had chest pains, swollen and painful lymph nodes, and he could not stop coughing. He was in so much pain, and he was so tired that he could not sit at the piano for more than a few minutes, therefore making a recital or performance impossible. He saw countless doctors and underwent one test after another before he was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You may be asking, how could this happen? How could one young life be changed so drastically, seemingly overnight? Well, you'll hear that in addition to his school, piano, homework, and volunteer work, Dakota also worked at a local landscaping company, where his responsibilities included cutting lawns, trimming hedges, and applying a product called Lush Fertilizer. You will learn that this product was rushed to the market. Without sufficient studies to its safety. You will learn that this product was rushed to the market despite evidence that its key component, a bonding agent called Gerufo, was carcinogenic. And you will learn that despite knowing that baking or heating its product would remove any risk that it was carcinogenic, Lush Fertilizer CEO chose not to do so. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is our job to prove to you that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, was negligent and caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we must prove these things to you by the preponderance of the evidence, which simply means that they are more likely true than not. We will meet our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Dakota Weirs. He will tell you about his life before and after he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He will tell you that despite working closely with Lush Fertilizer for almost 4 years, nobody ever told him that it was carcinogenic, and nobody ever told him that he might be putting his life in danger by simply going to work. Second, you will hear from Carson Durst, who is the product development engineer on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizers for 4 years. He will tell you that Lush Fertilizer executives knew that Drufo may be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but decided to keep that information away from the public. It did nothing to make sure it was safe for the public. And lastly, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, who holds a PhD in agriculture and entomology. Dr. Rogers will explain to you how Drufo was rushed to the market without sufficient studies to its safety. He will describe to you how he led his own study that led to his conclusion that prolonged exposure to Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma to a high degree of scientific probability. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, at the conclusion of this case, after you have heard all the facts and the evidence, my co-counsel Jasmine Michievich will again walk you through the facts and the evidence and explain to you why Lush Fertilizers was negligent in rushing Drufo to the market without an appropriate warning label. And she will ask you to find Lush Fertilizers liable for causing Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the defense wish to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can proceed when ready.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, may it please the court. My name is Caitlin Clint, and I represent Lush Fertilizer, the defendant in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, irresponsibility has grave consequences. In this case, the plaintiff was irresponsible when they chose to be comfortable by neglecting the proper precautions they knew they should have taken when dealing with Drufo. Havens, as a company, was irresponsible when they did not require their employees to specifically follow the safety guidelines on Lush's label. The plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, has brought forth a negligence claim against my client. Dakota has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a horrible condition. And while the defense offers sympathy for what has happened to Dakota, we disagree with Dakota's claim. Dakota believes that 1, Lush Fertilizer contains a chemical bonding agent called Drufo. 2, Lush Fertilizer knew or should have known that Drufo causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And 3, Lush's failure to properly warn users about the dangers of its product is the sole cause of Dakota's cancer. While the defense agrees with the first claim, we vehemently deny the other 2. However, at the end of this trial, once you have heard all the evidence, it will be apparent that a verdict of not liable is the only appropriate verdict. The defense denies that Drufo causes non-Hodgkin cancer. We counter that even if it does, which we deny, Dakota Weirs was also negligent for failing to wear protective clothing and a respirator while using our product. There is no proof that the chemical from our fertilizer caused cancer, but even so, Dakota had the responsibility to use reasonable care when working with our fertilizer. When you hear all the evidence presented to you today, I want you to keep 2 main things in mind. 1, the plaintiff was fully aware of the precautions they should have taken when working with a fertilizer like Lush. 2, Drufo is a revolutionary product that is far better for the planet and for people than other fertilizers on the market. Today, you will hear from 3 of the plaintiff's witnesses. You will hear from the plaintiff themselves, Dakota Weirs, the lead product developer for Terrace Greenery, Carson Durst, and a professor at UC Berkeley, Dr. Casey Rogers. Dakota Weirs will testify that the sole cause of their non-Hodgkin lymphoma is due to their use of Lush Fertilizer, even though they used other long chemicals in fertilizers. Dakota will admit that they were told to cover their face and wear long clothes when working with the chemicals. Dakota chose comfortability when they were specifically told to wear proper clothing. Dakota knew that they should have taken proper precautions and yet still chose to put themselves in harm's way. Carson Durst will testify that they worked their way fast up within Lush. Lush hired Carson right after college at ASU. You will hear that Carson got a lot of complaints and had to go on a performance improvement plan or probationary status. When you hear what Carson will say on the stand, I want you to ask yourself this question. Is Carson actually qualified, or was it because of their relationship with the Dawn courts? Dr. Casey Rogers will testify for the first time as an expert witness. You will hear about a study that they conducted that to him proves that Drufo is unsafe and is what caused the plaintiff's cancer. However, you will come to hear that this study has never been published in a scholarly article, has never been peer-reviewed, and has never been replicated. You will hear that this study is problematic because of its small sample size that compares apples to oranges. Then you will hear from our 3 witnesses. First, Skylar Weirs. From Skylar, you will hear that Drufo is undoubtedly good for the environment. Drufo does not need to be applied as often as other fertilizers, meaning there is less nitrogen penetration and fewer carcinogenic pesticides. Next, you will hear from Blake Doncourt. From Blake, you will hear how Carson's claim about the safety of Drufo didn't come up until Carson was fired and started working for Terrace Greenery, Lush's biggest competitor. You will hear how Carson could have brought up those claims when he was working at Lush, and it was actually his job to do that. Last, you'll hear from Dr. Devin Williams. You'll hear that Drufo users have no higher risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma than users of other fertilizers. Dr. Williams proves this by walking through the process of eutrophication. You will hear that not only is Drufo safe, but Drufo is also beneficial to the environment and its users. Ladies and gentlemen, irresponsibility has grave consequences. In this case, the plaintiff was irresponsible when they chose to be comfortable instead of taking the proper precautions they knew they should have taken when dealing with Drufo. Also, the employer had the responsibility of enforcing the proper safety precautions as prescribed. The plaintiff has the responsibility to prove beyond a preponderance of evidence. A verdict of not liable is the only appropriate verdict. Thank you.
Thank you. And would the plaintiff like to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right. Dakota, if you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel, you may proceed.
Can you state your name for the record?
Dakota Weirs.
Can you tell the jury why you're here today?
I'm here because I developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after using Lush Fertilizer's product in my job for several years.
And when were you first diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I was first diagnosed just a little over a year ago, right before I was about to set out for college.
Can you tell us about your symptoms?
I feel frequent chest pains, I have chills, and often I have shortness of breath.
Did you see a doctor about your symptoms?
I did, but it felt like nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. After it felt like hundreds of hospital visits and tests, I was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Tell us about your life before you were diagnosed. How did you spend your time?
I spent my time doing so many things it's almost hard to count. I loved my school and I would participate in any extracurriculars that I could. I volunteered around my community for those that were less fortunate than me. But more than anything else, I loved to play the piano. Piano was my passion in life. I picked it up from my grandfather, who is sadly passed, but to this day, it is my greatest joy in life.
Did you win any awards or competitions for your music?
I did. I was featured in a number of recitals and actually won a number of competitions. But my most proud achievement is earning a full ride scholarship to Juilliard.
Can you tell us what Juilliard is?
I might be a little biased here, but Juilliard is the best music conservatory in the world, and it's in the amazing city of New York with some amazing alumni, like singer Nina Simone and composer John Williams.
Mr. Weirs, what else did you do before you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, with what little free time I had outside of school and volunteering, I worked at a small landscaping company.
Where were you working when you were diagnosed?
I was working at Haven Landscaping, a small locally owned landscaping business.
And how long have you been working there?
I'd been working there for about 4 years, so since I was 14. By the time I was diagnosed, I had been working there for 4 years.
What were your job responsibilities like?
Well, since when I joined, I was only 14. I was primarily responsible for spreading seed and fertilizer rather than working heavy equipment.
Mr. Weirs, did you like your job?
I loved my job. I loved being able to work outdoors. I loved being able to work with my hands. I loved how my job would take me to new and interesting places in my city that I would never even have given a second look.
In their opening statement, Lush Fertilizer's attorney said that you did not follow the safety instructions on that label. What is your response to that?
That's absolutely not true. The label only made some suggestions on how to use the product or what might happen if it got into your eyes. There wasn't anything about how the fertilizer could be dangerous or what might happen if you didn't follow these suggestions on the label.
Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Weirs, do you recognize what has previously been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's a Lush Fertilizer bottle label.
Is this a fair and accurate photo of the label for Lush fertilizer that you used during your time as a landscape technician?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Your Honor, for permission for my co-counsel to publish Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 to the jury.
Yes, and in the future, let's wait till it's admitted before we publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, did you take any safety measures while using Lush fertilizer?
I didn't, but nothing was required by my job. My boss might suggest that we wear a mask when working with chemicals, but I didn't see anybody around me wearing a mask, so it really felt like a suggestion. We were also technically supposed to wear long sleeves and pants when working with the fertilizers, but it was summer and everybody around me was just wearing shorts and t-shirts, so it felt like a suggestion, and I never got the impression that anybody thought that the fertilizer could be dangerous.
Did you ever get in trouble for not covering your face or the rest of your body while working with the fertilizer?
No, I didn't, and as far as I could tell, nobody else did either. So it felt like a suggestion rather than a requirement, and I didn't think, and everybody around me didn't think, that the fertilizer could actually be dangerous.
Did you have any reason to believe that Lush fertilizer could cause harm to your health?
No, as you can see on the label, there wasn't anything about how it could be dangerous.
Opinion, Your Honor.
Sorry, say again.
Opinion, Your Honor.
Response?
Your Honor, this statement is not being offered for the truth of the matter, but rather for the effect it has on the listener.
Right, but the objection was, were you objecting that it was an opinion of some sort?
This objection was for opinion and kind of in cohesion with some speculation as well.
Okay, response to that.
Your Honor, my witness is simply testifying to his experience. He is not testifying to the truth of whether Drufo is carcinogenic or not, but rather simply what he experienced when he was working with the fertilizer.
Okay, I'll allow it. Objection overruled.
Thank you. Mr. Weirs, did you have any reason to believe that using Lush fertilizer could cause harm to your health?
No, as you can see on the label, there wasn't anything about how the fertilizer could be harmful or what might happen if you didn't follow these suggestions.
Mr. Weirs, can you please read the first active ingredient on the label for the jury?
Drufo.
Did you know what Drufo was when you were using Lush fertilizer?
I had no idea. If I did, I would never even have gone near the stuff.
Mr. Weirs, does the Lush fertilizer label in Exhibit 1 use the word carcinogen anywhere in the ingredient list?
It doesn't say that anywhere.
Does the label tell you that you must wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
It only makes some suggestions. It doesn't say anything about anything being required.
Does it tell you what might happen if you don't wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
It doesn't say that anywhere.
Does the label tell you what might happen if you don't cover your arms and hands while using Lush fertilizer?
No, it doesn't.
And does the label tell you anything about what might happen to you if you use Lush fertilizer?
It just says it might irritate my eyes.
And to reiterate, Mr. Weirs, when did you first start exhibiting symptoms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, I first started exhibiting symptoms just a little over a year ago, right before I was set to leave for Juilliard.
How has having non-Hodgkin's lymphoma impacted your life?
Well, aside from my symptoms, which are horrible, I have chest pains, chills, and constant fatigue. But aside from that, I'm not even able to go to school or play the piano or volunteer.
Did you end up accepting your scholarship to Juilliard?
No, I was unable to. The school has allowed me to defer for up to 2 years, but I know my condition is not going to get any better anytime soon.
Is there a cure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, unfortunately there isn't. I've been informed that I'll have to live with this for the
Objection, Your
rest.
Honor. This witness is giving a medical opinion.
Response?
Your Honor, under a hearsay objection, my witness is qualified and allowed to testify to the medical diagnosis that he has received.
Any reply?
This is a lay witness, Your Honor, therefore cannot testify on the grounds of a medical diagnosis.
The objection will be overruled. The jury will be instructed that this witness is testifying as a lay witness and only as to this witness's understanding of this witness's own health condition. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, is there a cure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, unfortunately, there isn't. I'll have to live like this for the rest of my life.
What do you want out of this lawsuit?
It's hard to say what I want. I want to go back to school. I want to go back to volunteering. I want to go back to playing the piano. I want to go to Juilliard, but I know none of those things are going to happen. I guess I just want to hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for what they did to me and make sure that they can't do it to anybody ever again.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dakota Weirs. Let's begin by discussing your enjoyment of playing the piano. You play the piano, correct?
Well, after my symptoms, I'm no longer able to, but before, yes.
And you received a scholarship from Juilliard.
Yes, a prestigious school in New York.
Though you did not take the scholarship, it still stands for 2 years, correct?
It does, but I've been informed that my condition isn't going to get any better anytime soon.
However, your doctor has hope you will recover before then, correct?
No,
Your doctor has not made any conclusions that you will not recover, correct?
well, based on my diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I know that I will not recover in time to accept the scholarship.
However, your doctor has not made any conclusions that you will recover before then, correct?
My doctor is almost certain that I will not recover before then.
Do you recall giving a statement before this trial?
I do.
And that statement was made under oath, correct?
I believe so.
And you swore to tell the truth, correct?
I swore to tell the truth to my knowledge.
Could you please refer to your own witness statement, page 13, lines 52 and 53?
52 and 53.
Yes. Page 13, lines 52 and 53.
Lawyers and unscrupulous. Hold up.
I can read it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, let me do it. I'm sorry. 52 and 53.
Starting at even though.
Even though my doctor has not given up hope, hope is not equivalent to a medical diagnosis.
I said that your doctor has not made any conclusions, so you will not recover before then. So now we will move on and discuss your landscaping career. You have experience in landscaping for many years, correct?
I did before my diagnosis.
And you stated that you love the outdoors, correct?
I do, yes.
So you would not wear protective face coverings while landscaping, correct?
I didn't wear protective face coverings because it was almost impossible for me to breathe.
Your boss instructed you to wear a face covering as well, correct?
Yes, my boss did, but it was so long ago, and everybody around me at the time was just wearing shorts and t-shirts, no masks, no anything. So it felt like a suggestion, and I definitely would have if I knew the fertilizer was dangerous.
But you were also supposed to wear long sleeves, pants, gloves, and gloves when working with the fertilizer, correct?
Yes, but I was only 14 and everybody around me was just wearing shorts and a t-shirt.
And no one at Havens Landscaping enforced this either.
It wasn't necessarily enforced, but it definitely would have if people knew that the fertilizer was dangerous.
You were told to wear protective covering because of the chemicals in the fertilizer, correct?
I was suggested to, as yes, there was a, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. You were told to wear protective clothing because of the chemicals in the fertilizer. correct?
Because of the chemicals in the fertilizer?
Yes.
I don't believe it was because of the chemicals in the fertilizer. I was told to because it was a suggestion made by my employer.
For the fertilizer, correct?
I think for most fertilizers.
So you used other fertilizers and lawn chemicals, correct?
I might have offhand used some other fertilizers, yes.
And these other chemicals and fertilizers could potentially be harmful, correct?
I don't think I would know enough to say that these fertilizers are harmful, but I do know enough to say that Drufo, a key component in lush fertilizer, is definitely carcinogenic.
Do we have the labels of those other fertilizers?
I did not bring them into court today because they are not the company that I'm suing for putting a possibly carcinogenic product in their fertilizer.
So we cannot guarantee that those.
So I'm going to interrupt for a moment. If the witness can shorten the answers, if the question calls for a yes or no answer, just go ahead and give the yes or no answer, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
You can proceed.
So we don't have any guarantee that those can potentially be harmful, as we do not have the labels here today in court.
We have no guarantee that it can't be harmful.
Yes, as we do not have the labels of the other fertilizers and lawn chemicals you used.
I can say we have no guarantee. Yes.
Okay. Moving on to Exhibit 1, as it has already been admitted into evidence. Do you have a clear and unmarked copy in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Allow my co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 1. This label directly reads hazard as well as caution in all capital letters, correct?
It does, but only under the first aid and if in I section.
Mr. Weirs, a yes or no will suffice. This label also clearly states user safety recommendations, correct?
It says user safety recommendations, correct.
This label directly states to use protective clothing with exposed skin, a face mask, and to wash your hands before and after use, correct?
It is recommended, yes, but not required.
It is directly stated, was my question.
It is stated, but that certainly does not constitute a requirement, yes.
If the witness can answer yes and no questions with yes and no answers, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. No one at Haven showed you this label, correct?
It was on the bottle, so I might have seen it once or twice.
Yes or no will suffice. Dakota Weirs.
I'm sorry, I'm just providing context for when I might have seen it.
No one at Haven showed you this label, correct?
I believe it might have been shown to me, but I
You
don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. You suspect you received non-Hodgkin lymphoma because you and your sister Skylar experienced similar things except for the landscaping job, correct?
For a multitude of reasons, yes.
And you say Skylar has done extensive research on Drufo, correct?
She has, yes.
And a yes or no will suffice on this question. Your sister Skylar is testifying against you today, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect,
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
please.
Mr. Weirs, how old were you when you first started working at Haven Landscaping?
I was only 14 when I first started working, and I was just trying to make some money for Juilliard.
Did you have any awareness of what could happen to you if you utilized lush fertilizer?
I had no idea. There wasn't anything on the labeling, and nobody else told me, so I had no idea.
So did the label say that any sort of precautionary measures were required?
It said nothing was required. They only made some slight suggestions on how to use the product or what might happen if it got into your eyes.
Did lush fertilizer's label communicate in any way that the product could affect your health?
It only said that it would irritate my eyes. There certainly wasn't anything about
carcinogens.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross.
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Witness will be excused. Next witness for the plaintiff.
Your Honor, we would like to call the plaintiff's second witness, Mr. Carson Durst, to the stand.
Okay, we'll give them a moment to change the screen name. Okay, Mr. Durst, if you raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. Ms. McGowan, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name for the jury.
Carson Durst, spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Why are you here today, Mr. Durst?
I'm here today because I believe I can give my opinion that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic and that Lush Fertilizer knew about it.
What is your educational background?
I graduated from Arizona State University with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed as the head of the research and development team at Terra's Greenery.
Can you tell me about your occupation history before Terra's Greenery?
Yes, before working at Terra's Greenery, I worked at Lush Fertilizer for 4 years as a product development engineer.
And how did you find that job?
So my job at Lush Fertilizer actually started as an internship, and 3 months into that internship, I got promoted to a full-time product development engineer.
Did you meet the qualifications for your promotion?
Absolutely, I met the qualifications. I was working at a higher work level than my colleagues, and that's why I got promoted over them.
What were your responsibilities as a product development engineer at Lush Fertilizer?
We worked on the testing and development of new fertilizers.
And were you required to apply your degree in chemical engineering in your work on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes. If I didn't have my degree, I wouldn't have been able to do my job not only at Lush Fertilizer, but also at the 15 years since the Terra's Greenery.
Your Honor, permission for a constructive sidebar.
Sure.
Mr. Durst signed a non-disclosure agreement with Lush Fertilizer, which prohibits him from disclosing information about his work at Lush Fertilizer. Because this disclosure of information is essential for the jury to understand Mr. Durst's testimony today, we ask that the court order Mr. Durst be permitted to discuss his work and any information he gained at Lush Fertilizer that is relevant to his testimony.
Response? You're still on mute. There you go.
Oh, sorry. The defense has no objection to this, Your Honor.
No objection to Mr. Durst testifying, even though there is a confidentiality agreement that he entered into previously.
Yes, the defense is okay with him testifying to his job at Lush Fertilizer.
Okay, great, thank you. Hearing no objection, the court will find that this witness's testimony is not in violation of any sort of confidentiality agreements that he may or may not have entered into with the defendant prior to this trial. Therefore, he can testify freely without fear of violating that agreement. Ms. McGowan, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, did you participate in any studies at Lush Fertilizer about Drufo?
Yes, I actually did. And while I participated in these studies, I found a study that actually said that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats.
Were you able to find any studies that tested whether or not the chemical compound had any adverse effects on humans?
I did not find any studies on if it had adverse effects in humans, but that's because it's unethical to test these types of chemicals on humans, hence why it was tested on rats.
What did you do with the findings that Drufo may be carcinogenic in rats?
So I put them into my research notebook, and my research notebook for all the members of the research development team should be compiled into a bigger research document and sent up to senior management.
Do you know what Lush Fertilizer did with these findings?
No, I don't know what Lush Fertilizer did with these findings. All I know is that in September of 2003, just shortly after the first study on Drufo, we got the order to have a second study specifically regarding if Drufo was carcinogenic in humans.
Permission to show Exhibit 4 on the screen for Your Honor, opposing counsel, and the witness to refer to.
Do you plan on admitting this exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Would you like to try to admit it before we publish it?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, is Exhibit 4 a fair and accurate copy of the email that you received?
Exhibit 4 is a fair and accurate copy of the email I received, yes.
Permission to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this document is not hearsay because it is a statement of a party opponent under Rule 801D2D.
Okay, any reply?
Yes, this is hearsay. This because this is being used for the truth of the matter asserted, and this is, yeah.
Thank you. The court will find that this is non-hearsay, given that it is an email inside the company. It will qualify as admission by an agent of a party opponent. The Exhibit 4 will be admitted and you can publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is the email we received that ordered the second study on Drufo.
Who is Jerry Langley?
Jerry Langley is the Drufo product manager, and she works at Lush Fertilizer.
Mr. Durst, I'd like to focus on the first sentence of the second paragraph. Can you please read this aloud for the jury?
Yes, it reads, following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
Mr. Durst, who is this email addressed to?
This email was sent to the members of the research and development team at Lush, along with its Blake Doncourt.
Who is Blake Doncourt?
Blake Doncourt is the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Is he on the research and development team?
No, Blake's not on the research and development team.
Did Ms. Langley explain why she wanted a new study?
Ms. Langley said that she wanted a new study to confirm results from the previous one.
Did you participate in the second study?
I did participate in the second study, yes.
What did the team's research find?
So it was my and many of my colleagues' findings that Drufo was in fact carcinogenic, and we even discussed a potential link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at a meeting where we discussed our findings.
How did your supervisor, Jerry Langley, respond?
Jerry just said that we'd keep the information in the walls until the final report was published.
Did the official report published by the company mention anything about the potential connection to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
The connection between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was not mentioned once in the final report.
So what did the official report say about the research and development team's findings?
That it was a representation of all of our information that is accurate, but it was very clear that some of the research was left out.
So did the official report accurately summarize your team's research?
No, some of the very important research we put forth showing that Drufo was carcinogenic was not included.
Mr. Durst, why did you leave Lush Fertilizer?
So I left Lush Fertilizer because very suddenly after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic in our meetings, my performance reviews started to suddenly drop.
How did your job at Lush Fertilizer officially come to an end?
I was forced out of the company.
Mr. Durst, is your testimony today motivated by the circumstances under which you were forced out of Lush Fertilizer?
No, my testimony is
Objection, Your Honor, this is a leading question.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, is your testimony today motivated by the circumstances under which you were forced out of Lush Fertilizer?
No, my testimony is only here today to show that I believe Drufo is carcinogenic and that Lush Fertilizer was aware.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, I would like to start with your relationship with the Doncourts. You were close with the Doncourts, correct?
Yes, correct.
And Mr. Doncourt overlooked other more qualified applicants to hire you, correct?
Well, Mr. Doncourt overlooked other applicants for the internship, but I got hired from that internship because of my own good work ethic.
When you were hired at Lush, it was your first job in fertilizer, correct?
That is correct.
When you were hired, you started to research Drufo, correct?
That is correct.
Yet you were not there at the creation of Drufo.
I was not in the company when Drufo was created, no, just to test it.
You said that you started to suspect foul play within Lush regarding Drufo when you were assigned to research it, correct?
That is correct.
but you made no attempt to contact any authorities, healthcare, or government officials, correct?
I think this is not in my witness statement here.
So is that a yes or a no?
I can't realistically answer this question, but I mean, if you want me to speculate, I certainly can.
No, let me rephrase my question. The people that you did raise this concern to, such as your manager, Gary Langley, were not healthcare or government officials, correct?
Oh, no, Jared just worked at the company.
Shortly after you suspected Drufo, you were put on a performance improvement plan, right?
That is correct. Right after I suspected Drufo was carcinogenic, I was put on a performance improvement plan. Yes.
You had a conversation with Mr. Doncourt about this, correct?
I did, yes.
And after the conversation, you described yourself as confused and betrayed by someone you were extremely close with, correct?
That is correct.
And right after the conversation, you started to look for another job, correct?
I did, yes.
And you chose to take a job at Lush's biggest competitor, Tara's Greenery, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, redirect,
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
please.
Again, Mr. Durst, why did you choose to leave Lush Fertilizer?
So like I said, I left Lush Fertilizer because very suddenly after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic, my performance reviews did in fact start to drop.
Why do you believe your performance was considered subpar?
I think my performance was considered subpar because I did express my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic.
What kinds of tests did you perform at Lush Fertilizer?
Chemical tests on their fertilizer and their safety.
And would Lush Fertilizer publish?
This is outside of the scope of Cross.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm just asking Mr. Durst what kind of tests he performed at his job to clear up any questioning that the jury might have.
I don't have any recollection of the redirect examination or the cross-examination asking any questions about the testing. Do you?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, would Lush publish any of the research and development team's findings in any reports?
They didn't include any of the findings about Drufo being carcinogenic in their final reports.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions.
Recross?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness will be excused. Thank you very much. We can move on to, are there any other witnesses for the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Okay.
May I proceed?
Let's see here. Dr. Rogers, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. Now you may proceed.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning.
Can you please state your name for the jury?
I'm currently employed as a professor in the Agriculture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley.
What is your occupation, Dr. Rogers?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
What is your occupation, Dr. Rogers?
So my occupation is a professor at the Agriculture and Entomology Department at Berkeley.
Can you briefly describe your educational background?
Of course. So I received my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University and my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from Berkeley.
And are you currently teaching any courses at UC Berkeley?
Yes, I teach 3 classes right now. A 101 class called Intro to Horticulture Entomology, a 201 class called Food Crops, which focuses on the history and development of the primary crops that feed the U.S. currently, and a 301 class titled Herbicide Selectivity and Action, which focuses on the biochemical effects on our crops, of herbicides on our crops, excuse me.
And have you focused your research on any particular subject?
Yes, at the university, I conduct research in the toxicology lab where I focus on pesticide mode of action and metabolism by the human body. And I've also been studying the potentially harmful effects prolonged exposure to chemicals has on the body for many years. And more recently, the majority of that research has focused on the harmful effects of Drufo.
Permission to share my screen to present Exhibit 6 and 7 to you, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and the witness.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Yep. One moment. Dr. Rogers, do you recognize Exhibit 6 and 7?
I do. Exhibit 6 is a copy of my CV, and Exhibit 7 is a list of my research publications over the years.
Does your CV accurately set forth your educational and professional work background?
Yes.
Does Exhibit 7 accurately and completely list your published works?
In its entirety, yes.
Your Honor, we'd like to offer Exhibit 6 and 7 into evidence.
Objection?
No objection at this time.
6 and 7 will be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, have you published any articles about Drufo?
I have. I mean, you can see in Exhibit 7 that in 2017, I published an article in Biotech Information titled Drufo Toxicity and Carcinogenity, a review of the scientific basis of the European Union assessment. And more recently, in 2019, The Environmentalist published my article titled The Evidence of Human Exposure to Drufo, a review.
At this time, we would like to offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in the field of agricultural pesticides, including the human metabolism of pesticides.
Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Doctor, so could you please explain what it is you do in the field of toxicology?
I am afraid I don't work in the field of toxicology. I work with gardens and plants and insects in entomology and horticulture.
Thank you. And have you ever gotten any sort of education in the field of toxicology?
I have not received education in toxicology, no.
Your Honor, although not actually stipulated to be a toxicologist, we object to any sort of medical opinion in any sort of specific cancerous science or opinion in any sort of medical terms.
Response? You're on mute, counsel.
My apologies.
You're okay. You got a warm up. Go ahead.
Even though Dr. Rogers does not have a medical license, we've established that there is background in educational training, that he is able to opine on how agricultural chemicals affect the human body. Therefore, I do believe he is qualified to talk and share scientific causation opinions, not medical causation opinions.
Any reply?
Yes, Your Honor, although causation may be shared, no specific science about any sort of cancer or specific cancer should be shared.
Okay. Thank you. Having heard the arguments of counsel, the court will find that based upon the education, training, and experience of this witness, that he can and should be qualified in the fields of agricultural pesticides and human metabolism of pesticides. Therefore, he will be permitted to offer expert witness opinions in those areas. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, are you being paid for your work on this case?
Yes, I've received nominal compensation on an hourly basis for my time in court today and for the time I spent reviewing records and pertinent scientific literature to reach my opinions in this case.
Has this compensation influenced your opinions in any way?
Absolutely not. I'm here to give the jury my opinions based solely on my scientific research and my education, training, and experience, nothing else. I'm only being compensated for time I'm taking away from academic pursuits, nothing more.
I would now like to discuss your research on Drufo. Dr. Rogers, why did you decide to research the effects of Drufo?
I decided to research the effects of Drufo because, I mean, it caught my attention when it first came to the market because I believed it was rushed to the market without sufficient studies on its safety. I mean, because the scientific community already knew that it was carcinogenic in rats. So for many years after Drufo was released on the market, I heard reports on the potentially negative effects of the substance. And I wanted to study the chemical to determine any side effects or negative effects. So I thought it was important to conduct my own study to see if there were any adverse health effects in persons who were exposed to Drufo over long periods of time.
And how did you conduct your study?
So my study included a control group of people who had never been exposed to Drufo, a group of people who use products containing Drufo on occasion, and a group of people who are exposed to Drufo on a regular, almost daily basis.
And what did the study find?
The study found that those with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as those without, suggesting a strong correlation between exposure to Drufo and cancer.
Was there any specific type of cancer related to this experiment?
Yes, the majority of those diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with endocrine and exocrine-based varieties, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Dr. Rogers, does this mean that Mr. Weirs is not the first person to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to exposure to Drufo?
That is correct.
Dr. Rogers, do you have an opinion on whether exposure to Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the general human population?
Yes, it is my opinion to a high degree of scientific probability that that in people generally, exposure to Drufo causes cancer, and more specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Doctor, is this your first time testifying as an expert witness?
Yes, it is.
And could you please, so you've seen Exhibit 7, correct?
I do, yes.
And this is a list of your published work?
Yes.
And you say that you've conducted a study on the long-term health effects of prolonged exposure to potentially harmful substances, including Drufo, correct?
Including Drufo, yes.
And in this study of yours, you compared a control group of people, so people who had never been exposed, to occasional Drufo users to people who use Drufo on a daily, correct?
That is correct.
And the people you chose to compare were examples of farm laborers, casual gardeners, and people who did neither of those things, correct?
Those are the people compared in the study, yes.
And wouldn't you agree that farm laborers and gardeners are exposed to a number of different products and environmental conditions that people who don't use those things don't encounter at all?
The differences might be, or like they would, excuse me, allow me to restate. Generally, they would be exposed to different chemicals other than the general population, but there is still exposure that happens with Drufo.
But these exposures could include pesticides and plant foods, correct?
It could include other pesticides, yes, but the majority was Drufo.
And wouldn't you agree that people who are laborers and gardeners and neither of those things live relatively different lives, right?
Sure, they would live relatively different lives, but
and those with different lifestyles comes different environments and environmental exposures, right?
Yes.
But even though that you knew that these people live completely different lives, you still chose to compare them in the same study, correct?
I chose to compare them because there was still a control group that needed to be had to make a comparison between people who had no exposure and people who did have exposure to then make that comparison.
But Dr. Rogers, wouldn't you agree that a study comparing users of other fertilizers with Drufo would have been a much more accurate study?
The study might provide different results than that of mine, but my study still has complete validity in science.
And just to clarify, Dr. Rogers, looking at Exhibit 7, this study has never been conducted or peer-reviewed, correct?
On Exhibit 7 of my research publications?
Just referencing the study.
Sure, yes. It was never peer-reviewed, no.
And it's never been replicated?
It has not been replicated, no.
And it's never been published in a scientific journal?
It has not been published in a scientific journal, no.
Thank you. And just to clarify, this is the first time in this case that this study has ever made a large-scale appearance, correct?
It would be the first time this case has been presented in court, yes.
And yet this study of yours is the groundwork of basically the plaintiff's case, correct?
I wouldn't say the groundwork. I would say the groundwork is a 14-year-old boy being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I believe there are references and things that are called back to on my study, yes.
But the groundwork in that Drufo is a potential cause has come from your study?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
Before I begin, may I ask how much time I have left?
1 second. 1 second, Your Honor.
Take your time. No pun intended.
Um, no further questions.
Okay.
Oh, wait. My apologies. My timekeeper said 1 second. I thought,
As in,
I-
we need time to calculate how much time is left.
my apologies. He said,
Let's just be real clear. How much time do you have left?
We have 4 minutes and 36 seconds.
Okay. Would you like to do redirect?
yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, proceed when ready.
Dr. Rogers. Do you remember giving recommendations on wearing protective clothing?
Yes, I did make recommendations.
And when were these recommendations made?
The recommendations that I made in my study were made a year before Dakota had left his fertilization company, meaning Dakota could not have had proper time to heed my warning as a doctor.
Thank you. No further questions.
Recross?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, doctor, you can be excused.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses for the plaintiff?
The plaintiff rests.
Okay, thanks very much. Any motions by either side at this time? Okay, hearing none. Does the defense intend to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Ms. Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Alrighty. And counsel for both sides are ready, it appears. Ms. Weirs, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, please state and spell your last name for the court.
My name is Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, what is your job?
I'm an investigative journalist for The Rationalist magazine. I'm also a waitress just to make a little extra money, but my true passion is with journalism.
And what type of magazine is The Rationalist?
The Rationalist is a science education and advocacy magazine. And basically this means that we encourage our readers to learn every single scientific fact there is to know about a highly politicized scientific topic. For example, when I wrote my Drufo article, I learned everything there was to know about Drufo before I made my conclusion on whether or not it was safe.
And what main types of articles do you write for The Rationalist?
Mainly individual health and corporate policy, and some of these have been published in highly regarded scientific magazines.
And how is a background in research of individual health and corporate policy relevant to the case today?
So I actually spent a year researching modern agritech, which included Drufo. I read publications by agritech companies. I reviewed the reference studies in those publications, as well as tracked down information done by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association for State Departments of Agriculture. And I ended up writing an article that questioned the link between Drufo and cancer.
And when did you write this article about Drufo?
I wrote this article before my brother was even diagnosed with cancer. So there's no way that any beliefs about Drufo or my brother have anything to do with each other.
And where did you get your education from, Ms. Weirs?
I don't actually have a college degree.
What are your qualifications then?
My knowledge includes general as well as historical and statistical information. And I have an overall perspective on modern agritech that a college classroom just simply couldn't have given me.
And what was your role in this case?
I was retained by the defense to share my research on commercial agritech and GMOs.
What is modern agritech?
Modern agritech is the use of technology basically to improve efficiency of agricultural products.
Your Honor, the defense offers Ms. Skylar Weirs as an expert regarding modern agritech and the effect of pesticides pursuant to Rule 702 to share her opinion on the safety of pesticides, herbicides, and other agritech products.
Okay. Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for a brief voir dire.
Yeah, briefly. Thank you.
May I proceed?
Please.
Ms. Weirs, you work as a journalist, true?
That's correct.
So you don't hold any scientific degrees?
I don't, but I've done extensive research on the topics that I've been called to speak about here today.
Do you have any scientific training?
No, I do not.
You don't have any experience as a scientist?
I don't, but I have researched extensively on this topic.
So you are relying on the articles that you read as a journalist for your opinions, true?
That's correct, by very well-regarded companies.
Articles that were written by actual scientists?
That's correct.
So you're actually relying on their expertise for your opinions?
That's correct.
Your Honor, we renew the arguments raised in our motion in limine to preclude Ms. Weir's expert testimony. While we have no objection to Ms. Weir's talking about the agritech industry in general, we do object to her providing any opinions on the science behind how DRUFO works. The defendant has not shown that Ms. Weir's is qualified by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education to provide scientific opinions, and we do not believe the knowledge acquired by Ms. Weir's is the knowledge contemplated by Rule 702, as there is no way to verify the reliability of that research.
Okay, thank you very much. Response?
Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Weirs has spent considerable time researching agritech companies and DRUFO. She has reviewed publications written by those companies, research studies referenced in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and NSDA. The witness has testified about her vast knowledge, skill, and experience that has consumed her life. Her work is highly regarded and respected by a number of publications. A court may qualify an expert witness based on knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. Despite how Schuyler lacks one of those factors, all of her qualifications are sufficient to establish that the witness has specialized knowledge beyond that held by the average juror pursuant to Rule 702.
Any reply?
Again, Your Honor, we would object to Ms. Weir's providing any scientific opinion on how DRUFO works. We do not object to her testifying about the agritech industry in general, but she does not have, she has not shown that she relied on verifiable research, and we cannot verify the reliability of the research she did rely on, which is the knowledge contemplated by Rule 702, or the knowledge required to be contemplated by Rule 702.
Okay, thank you, counsel. The court's heard argument previously, pre-trial, there were motions raised on this issue, and then the court has heard the testimony this morning laying the foundation, including voir dire. I will find that based upon the witness's education, training, and experience that she can and will be received as an expert in this court, being able to offer opinions as requested by counsel. The objection raised to this witness's testimony, while strong, I think goes more to the weight and not the admissibility of this witness's testimony, which is something I'm sure you can point out on cross-examination. So the witness will be received as an expert. Ms. Intner, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you say you came to your expert conclusion through your research with Rationalist. Tell us more about this.
Well, recently, Lush Fertilizer has been the target of a lot of conspiracies in the agritech community. And since The Rationalist is a science education and advocacy magazine, I decided to do some more research on it.
How so?
Basically, people who are hesitant to accept change are spending millions of dollars to destroy Lush's reputation because they know that DRUFO can overpower their businesses.
What do you mean when you say DRUFO could overpower their businesses?
Well, we know that DRUFO is a bonding agent, which means that less fertilizer needs to be applied to reach the desired effect.
And how does this work?
DRUFO bonds top grass to the three active ingredients in Lush's fertilizer, which is phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen. And it prevents the fertilizer from washing away so quickly, which means that it doesn't need to be applied as often.
And what are the benefits of fertilizer not needing to be applied as often?
Then they don't need to be applied as often to reach maximum yield. It ultimately minimizes nitrogen penetration.
And why is minimizing nitrogen penetration so important?
Because when nitrogen penetrates, it can contaminate groundwater and other waterways, which can contribute to synthetic cancer and eventually just becomes way worse for the environment.
Okay, so DRUFO minimizes nitrogen penetration. What about pesticides and fertilizer?
Lush actually has way less pesticides than the average fertilizer, which means less glyphosate and arsenic.
And why is less glyphosate and arsenic so important?
Because there's a much clearer link between these two pesticides and cancer.
Ms. Weirs, in your expert opinion, did you reach any conclusions about this case?
Yes, in my expert opinion, Lush fertilizer is just as safe, if not even more safe than competitors' products.
Sorry. You have chosen to take a side against your sister in this case. Why?
I'm not here to take a side against my brother. I'm simply here to stand by my research. I know what I'm doing is right, and that's the side that I want to stay on.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
please.
Good morning, Ms. Weirs. You consider yourself an investigative journalist, true?
Yes, that's correct.
And you haven't just written about modern agriculture, have you?
That's true.
You've also written about UFOs,
Yes.
flat earth theory.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, this is a cross-examination and I am testing this witness's qualifications.
Okay, any reply?
Yes, Your Honor. I do not see how Ms. Weir's past articles matter in this case. We're here to talk about Drufo and its effects and other modern agritech to compare with Drufo and not UFOs and flat earth theories.
Okay, the court will find that this goes to the witness's credibility and qualifications. You can proceed. Objection overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Weirs, you've also written about flat earth theory.
That's correct. I've written about those, but those are mostly just for fun. I take agritech much more seriously.
And you've also written about anti-vax culture, true?
That's true.
Ms. Weirs, you are here for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Correct.
So you understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture from the University of California at Berkeley and a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, correct?
Correct.
You understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses in herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Weirs, you don't have a PhD in agriculture?
I do not, but I've been studying it extensively.
You also don't have a PhD in agricultural technology?
I do not.
You don't have a PhD in any subject?
No.
You don't teach courses in agriculture or otherwise?
No.
You don't have a master's degree in agriculture or agricultural technology?
I do not.
And you don't have a bachelor's degree in any of those subjects?
No.
So your opinions on agricultural technology are based solely on your work as a journalist?
I've done extensive research on this topic and I'm truly passionate about it.
So your opinions are based solely on the 1 year that you spent researching Drufo as a journalist?
That's correct, but I've done extensive research by companies that are very well regarded.
Yet despite this fact, you believe that the jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, redirect.
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, how long have you been researching Drufo?
I've been researching Drufo for a very, very long time.
And where did you get your information on Drufo?
I got my information on Drufo from very well-regarded scientific companies.
And Ms. Weirs, do you take your research seriously?
I do. I take it more seriously than anything else.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Any recross?
No recross at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, you can be excused. Does the defense have any more witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Blake Doncourt to the stand.
All righty, Mr. Doncourt, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. Counsel, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state and spell your last name for the court.
My name is Blake Doncourt, Doncourt.
What is your profession and involvement in Lush?
I am the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
How does Lush manage its profits?
Lush is a successful company, and I'm happy to say we're able to share some of that success. We donate 10% of our annual income to charities that decrease the world's nitrogen footprint.
Have you or Lush ever been recognized for your contributions to the environment?
Yes, in fact, both I and Lush have. I was nominated for the Champions of the Earth Award a couple of years ago in 2020, and Lush was nominated for the SEAL Award, which is a business sustainability award.
As a company and CEO, what are your values?
At Lush, we consider ourselves great stewards of environmental and safety practices, and our contributions to the environment speak for themselves.
And how do you personally feel about your company?
I am very, very proud of my company. We prioritize safety, and we make great efforts to keep the environment in great shape. It's become everything I've wanted it to become.
What are your qualifications for your own knowledge of your product?
I am the CEO of my company, so I oversee all research and development.
And how long have you had this company?
I've had this company since the year 2000.
What about Lush makes it different from other fertilizers?
Lush uses a bonding agent called Drufo. It's a revolutionary product.
And based on your knowledge, do you think Drufo is harmful?
No, not at all. According to our in-house research, there's no reason to believe that it is.
Why isn't there a warning label on your product?
There's no warning label on our product because there's no reason to warn anyone. It's not harmful.
And if there was proper science and research to support a possible danger in your product, what would you have done differently?
Without a doubt, I would have put a warning label on our products.
And Dakota Weir's claims you do not bake the fertilizer in order to save money for your ex Morgan. What do you think about this?
That claim is completely false. I make more than enough money to pay off my ex, support my new partner, support Lush, and donate 10% of our annual income to charity.
So why didn't you bake your products?
We didn't bake our products because, again, there was no research saying that we need to. It's like riding a bike with training wheels, even if we know how to ride a bike.
Was Lush ever advised of possible risks?
No, not to my knowledge.
Explain your connection with Carson Durst.
Yes, Mr. Durst. He was a family friend who I mistakenly pulled strings to hire.
And ever since Carson Durst has left Lush, what is his new occupation?
He now works for Terra Greenery, where he's getting paid more money than we could ever afford to pay him here at Lush. And Terra's Greenery is also developing a very similar product to Drufo, which I find very, very odd.
Please shift your attention to Exhibit 5. Do you have a clear and unmarked copy?
Yes, I do.
Please describe what is Exhibit 5.
Exhibit 5 is a non-compete agreement.
Does this agreement fairly and accurately depict the agreement between Lush and Carson Durst?
Yes, it does.
Is this agreement a standard for Lush employees?
Yes, it is. I have all my employees sign a non-compete agreement.
Your Honor, the defense moves to admit Exhibit 5 as evidence.
Response? Or sorry, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Allow my co-counsel to screen share this exhibit.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. And who signed this agreement?
Mr. Durst and I signed this agreement.
What would happen if Carson Durst disclosed any information to Terrace Greenery?
Well, that would be a direct violation of this non-compete agreement, and Lush would have the legal right to take Mr. Durst to court.
Going back to the topic of Dakota Weirs, do you sympathize with Dakota?
Yes, of course I do. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a terrible, terrible disease. I truly, truly hope she makes a speedy recovery. However, I disagree with her claim she has against my products.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay, cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
please.
Mr. Doncourt, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer, Inc., correct?
Correct.
And you have been the CEO of Lush Fertilizer since 2000?
Yes, since the year 2000.
So you were the CEO in December of 2003, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Doncourt, I wrote it down to make sure I got it right today, but you testified in court that according to an in-house research, there is no reason to believe that Drufo is harmful. Is this correct?
Correct.
But isn't it true that your own research and development team at Lush Fertilizer raised concerns about Drufo being possibly carcinogenic?
No, not to my knowledge.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 4 on the screen.
Okay. Only showing the witness and not the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Doncourt, Jerry Langley was the Drufo product manager in September of 2003, right?
Correct.
Oh,
Is
in one
this-
moment. sorry, 4 is admitted, so it can be shown to the jury. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. One moment, please, for my counsel to open it. Mr. Doncourt, this is your name in the to line of the email, correct?
Correct, but I never saw this email.
I'd like to shift your attention to the first sentence in the first paragraph. Ms. Langley writes that she has not established any process expectations related to periodic verification of in-house research and development test results before the company considers certain findings conclusive. Did I read this correctly?
Yes, but I'd like to say I've never seen this email. It's my first time seeing it.
So you're saying even though your name is listed in the recipients of the email, you've never seen this?
No, I've never seen this email.
Mr. Doncourt, I'd now like to shift your attention to the second sentence of the second paragraph. Ms. Langley also writes that we are reinitiating the study in the coming weeks with fresh product samples. Did I read this correctly?
Correct. I've never seen this though.
Are you aware that Mr. Durst testified to receiving this email?
Yes, I believe this email is completely manufactured, and I've never seen it.
So your testimony today is that this email was never sent and you have never seen it, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'd like to talk to you about Lush Fertilizer's decision not to bake any of its products now. You'd agree that baking the fertilizer removes any risk that it is carcinogenic, right?
Yes, but there's no risk to begin with. Why would we bake our products if there's no risk?
So although baking removes any risk that your fertilizer is carcinogenic, you did decide not to bake any of Lush Fertilizer's products, right?
Correct, but there was no risk.
So besides it not being necessary, isn't it true that you chose not to bake the product as a cost-saving measure?
That is incorrect. Although we did, it did create a small margin of income. That wasn't our leading reason to not bake the Drufo.
Your Honor, permission to show Exhibit 8 on the screen for yourself, the witness, and the opposing counsel to refer to.
Yes.
Mr. Doncourt, do you recognize this document as Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014?
Yes.
And you created this in your role as CEO, correct?
Correct.
Is Exhibit 8 a fair and accurate version of Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would like to offer to move Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
8 will be admitted without objection. Go ahead,
Thank
counsel.
you. Thank you, Your Honor, as well as permission to publish to the jury.
Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, you created this table to determine what the cost would be of baking Lush Fertilizer's products, didn't you?
Correct, yes.
And the third column shows Lush Fertilizer's net profits after deducting the cost of baking.
Yes.
And by the definition of net profits, this means you're deducting the cost of doing business, such as salaries and expenses, and this is everything left over, right?
Correct.
Then isn't it true that according to your own projections, Lush Fertilizer still would have been profitable every year, even after baking its fertilizer?
Correct, but there was no reason to bake our fertilizer to begin with.
You estimated that Lush Fertilizer would have made over $1 million in profits every year from 2004 to 2014, even if it baked its fertilizer, right?
Correct, but why would we bake our products?
So this wasn't enough profit for you, was it?
Excuse me? Can you restate that?
This wasn't enough profit for you, was it?
No, it was plenty, except there was just no reason to bake our Drufo to begin with, so why would we?
Objection, Your Honor. This is argumentative.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, you thought that removing any risk that your fertilizer was carcinogenic was simply overkill, right?
Correct, because there was no risk.
But so you never published these financial findings to the public, did you?
No, I did not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, redirect.
Yes, briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
What do you believe about the email by Jerry Langley?
I've never seen that email, and it was completely manufactured.
And why did you choose to not bake your products?
There was no reason for us to bake our products.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Recross.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness can be excused. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Okay, Dr. Williams, Please raise your right hand. Dr. Williams, do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. Counsel, you can inquire.
Doctor, could you please state and spell your last name for the court?
My name is Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your job?
I lead the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer. I'm also the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
And doctor, could you please explain exactly what it is you research as a toxicologist?
I'm a research toxicologist by training and work to understand how biological systems respond to environmental interventions. Now, whether that is alcohol in neurochemical pathways or inorganic compounds and agricultural enhancing organophosphorus products, I see myself as having an inherent responsibility to also consider the why and if beyond immediate proper objectives.
And would you say that you are experienced in your field of work?
Well, I started my career with Lush over a decade ago, and I've led the toxicology labs for 7 years. So I'd say, yeah, I'm well experienced.
Doctor, what are your qualifications?
My education from undergrad through PhD was completed at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. I also did a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah. My work has taken me to various states, but I primarily work in my home state of Colorado now, and I hold various accreditations that are all listed on my CV, including certifications in Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah.
Your Honor, the defense offers Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in the field of toxicology and research under Rule 702.
Any objection or voir dire?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness will be received as an expert in toxicology and research and may offer expert opinions in those areas. Counsel, you can proceed.
Doctor, what sort of tests do you perform to ensure the safety of your products?
Due to my training and experience, I am qualified to conduct tests using biomolecular and biochemical markers that tell me if a substance is going to harm the average person and how to neutralize any harms should they arise.
And doctor, even though you deemed it to be safe, Drufo-based products have been banned in other countries. Why is that?
While the EU and many countries that follow the EU's testings have banned Drufo, it is not because of cancer risks. Under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer formulations may be used that contribute more than incidental nitrate accumulation in lab tests. Although Drufo greatly reduces the amount of nitrates that accumulate in nature, there is still nitrogen in it.
And is the amount of nitrates in Lush fertilizer any different than other fertilizers?
No, it is true that if you pour some into a petri dish and add just the right bacteria, you will get just as many nitrates as with other fertilizers. But that's not what happens in nature. So the reality is that the EU bureaucracy chose to prohibit the use of fertilizers that reduce nitrates in nature because they don't do so under unrealistic laboratory conditions.
So doctor, what then are the benefits of Drufo in a fertilizer?
Well, fertilizers enhance the growth of plants in two ways, either by adding nutrients or by enhancing the effectiveness of the soil by modifying its water retention and aeration. Drufo does both. It is also more friendly to the environment. In the mid-20th century, fertilizer companies started using phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and zinc in their fertilizers, which increased the production rate up to 800%. However, this led to the problem known as eutrophication.
And doctor, what is eutrophication?
In layman's terms, it is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural runoff. This causes mass algal blooms, which can kill environments, fish, and more importantly, it can be harmful to humans.
But what's different then about Drufo?
Well, Drufo binds with the ingredients in the fertilizer to the grass on plants on which it is sprayed. As a result, less fertilizer needs to be sprayed and less washes away into the soil, thereby interrupting the whole eutrophication process at the very beginning. I can certainly give you a more complex description of this whole process. You don't get a PhD for understanding things only at a superficial level. However, I would have to use words like coagulated hydroxylapatite and phosphate precipitate. The point is, Drufo is a revolutionary product that is far better for the planet and for people than the old generation of fertilizers.
And doctor,
I hate to interrupt, Your Honor, but there is a major time discrepancy.
Okay, go ahead and everybody hit pause real quick. What's the discrepancy?
Currently, the discrepancy is off by 5 minutes. I made a clerical error.
Okay, so whose error and what do we need to do to correct it?
It was my error. I incorrectly placed 10 minutes and it was meant to be 15.
Okay.
Currently, the time would be, 1 second.
Take your time. It's worth getting right.
Okay. Currently, the defense stands at 11 minutes remaining.
Okay. And from the other timekeeper, do you agree with that?
I am off from that, but I'm fine if we go with 11.
Okay. Are both teams in agreement with it being 11 minutes? Okay, great. Thanks very much for pointing out the discrepancy. We appreciate it. That makes things go much more smoothly if we're all on the same page. Council, sorry for the interruption. If you want to go ahead and proceed.
No problem. Thank you so much. So back to Drufo. Why is it you think a few people who have used Drufo have developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
It's simply probability. If you take a large group of people, a small number of them will develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. That applies to any group of people. So when you take a large group of people who have used fertilizers with Drufo, a small number of them will develop the disease. However, those same people might have developed the cancer even if they had never used Drufo before. The data we have analyzed shows that people who use fertilizers with Drufo have no greater likelihood at developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma as people who use other fertilizers.
And doctor, are you familiar with Dr. Casey Rogers' research?
Yes, I am.
And his research is contrary to yours. Why do you feel like Dr. Casey's studies are improper?
As a true expert in this field, I believe that Dr. Rogers' studies should be deemed invalid for numerous reasons. In my last statement, I compared users of fertilizers with Drufo to users of other fertilizers. This is because you have to compare metaphorically apples to apples in order for a test to be deemed conclusive. Dr. Rogers in his study, however, compared farm laborers to gardeners to people who aren't in those types of jobs.
And doctor, what's wrong with those sort of comparisons?
Well, that's comparing apples to oranges. Farm laborers and gardeners are exposed to a variety of different products and environmental conditions that people who aren't in those types of jobs just don't encounter. It is also possible that farm laborers and gardeners have a higher incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. If that is true, then the groups of people Dr. Rogers looked at would have a higher incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma for reasons that have nothing to do with Drufo. Next, Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed, and more importantly, it has not been replicated.
So why do things like peer review and replication of these types of studies matter?
The history of science is replete with scientific study results that could never be duplicated. Sometimes that is because the one study was a fluke. Sometimes, however, it is because the person doing the study was biased. Dr. Rogers' career has been focused on finding harmful effects caused by chemical agents. Dr. Rogers' financial bias in this case is far too great for his study to be deemed conclusive.
And doctor, what other things did you find to be wrong with Dr. Rogers' analysis?
Scientists have a tendency to tailor and focus on certain aspects of a study in order to produce or find the desired results. This is why in the field of science, we prefer to conduct all of our tests double-blind. What this means is a scientist doesn't know which product or test group they're working with, and therefore they only report the true results. Dr. Rogers, however, does not conduct any of his tests double-blind, and all throughout his experiments, he knew which fertilizers had which ingredients.
And doctor, in your expert opinion, was Drufo the cause of Mr. Dakota Weir's development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Absolutely not. It is horrible that the plaintiff has this awful disease. However, I can say with a degree of certainty that Drufo was not the cause. I know that ultimately, Ms. Dakota Weir's developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma for reasons that have nothing to do with Drufo.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning.
You work for Lush Fertilizer, correct?
That is correct.
And they pay for your salary, true?
Yes, I work for them, like I said.
And you've actually worked at Lush Fertilizer for nearly a decade, isn't that right?
That is correct, over a decade, in fact.
Dr. Williams, Lush Fertilizer does not use Drufo in all of its products, right?
We do not use Drufo in the EU countries, no.
And so with that being said, my apologies. Can you give Drufo is banned, isn't just banned. Drufo is banned in France, isn't it?
Drufo is not only banned in France, it is banned in the entire EU. However, it is not because of cancer risks.
And with that being said, you're currently working on a study to submit to the EU, so they will reconsider the Drufo ban, right?
Yes, we would love if that ban is removed because Drufo is so much better for the earth. So the earth would just be such a better place if the entire world could use our fertilizers with Drufo.
Isn't it true that if this jury were to find out that Drufo causes cancer, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
That is correct. It would create so many roadblocks.
And in fact, that would prevent Lush Fertilizer from selling their products containing Drufo to a significant percentage of the global market, right?
That is correct.
So, Dr. Williams, it's fair to say you have a financial bias in the outcome of this case, true?
I admit having a small financial bias. However, my biasness is for the earth. I want what is best for the environment.
Dr. Williams, you were here for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Yeah.
You understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California at Berkeley and a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, right?
I understand that.
You understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses in herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
Yep.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers does not work for Lush Fertilizer, yes?
I am aware of that, yes.
But you do work for Lush Fertilizer, right?
That is correct.
Yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
Of course, Dr. Rogers' studies are just not that good.
Dr. Williams, one of your criticisms of Dr. Rogers' study is that it has not been replicated, right?
That is correct.
And as the lead of the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, you could have ordered Dr. Rogers' study to be replicated under the conditions that you have suggested, true?
That is fair to say.
But you haven't ordered that study, have you?
I have not, no.
Objection, Your Honor. That is speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not speculation. My witness is free to answer however they will.
May I respond?
Sure.
Your Honor, the opposing counsel is asking Dr. Devin Williams to speculate on whether or not he is able to order somebody outside of his jurisdiction to replicate a study.
Okay. The witness is testifying as an expert. Most expert witness opinions are actually pure speculation. So given that this witness is testifying as an expert, we'll allow him to speculate if he knows the answer to the question. You can re-ask the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. But you haven't ordered that study, have you, Dr. Williams?
I have not.
Dr. Williams, I want to talk about the testimony that you haven't given today. Dr. Williams, you can't tell the jury definitely that Drufo does not cause cancer because that's not how science works, true?
That is correct, yeah.
So, Dr. Williams, is your testimony today that it does cause cancer?
No.
One more question, Dr. Williams. Who is your employer?
I work for Lush.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, a brief redirect, Your Honor.
Please.
Doctor, what board position do you hold at Lush?
I'm the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
And Doctor, how would you say that this position affects your studies and the way that you carry yourself in all manners?
Oh, this means I conduct all of my studies in the utmost ethical manner.
And would you say that you carry yourself in any sort of biased way, in an ethical way? I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Would you say that any bias or improper carry of self would be nullified by this ethics?
I do not have any biasness in when I do my studies.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross.
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Doctor, you can be excused. Are there any other witnesses for the defense?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Okay, and there are no rebuttal witnesses for the plaintiff. Are we ready to proceed to closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm ready. Closing argument for the plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
One moment. Do we have counsel for the defense for close as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody's ready. Go ahead.
Thank you. Your Honor, members of the jury, today you have heard evidence from both the plaintiff and the defendant attempting to prove Lush Fertilizer is liable. But at its heart, this case is about a high school kid whose dreams were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of exposure to Lush Fertilizer. As the plaintiff, it was our job to prove the defendant was negligent and caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely true than not. We submit that we have met our burden. I'd like to draw your attention to instructions 2 and 3, which state that we can prove to you that Lush was negligent either by failing to exercise reasonable care to make sure its product was safe, or by proving that Lush knew its product was harmful and failed to adequately warn its consumers. We met our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you heard from my client, Dakota Weirs, who spends his free time volunteering at homeless shelters and participating in extracurriculars, but what truly drives Mr. Weirs has always been his passion for piano. He was so talented that he secured a full scholarship to Juilliard, but the debilitating illness he developed as a result of Lush's negligence causes him constant pain and fatigue and makes it impossible for him to sit at the piano for more than a few minutes at a time. Mr. Weirs has had everything taken from him, all because he wanted to work a job to save for a future he may never get. Second, you heard from Carson Durst, who worked for years as a product development engineer on Lush's research and development team and was a first-hand witness to its immoral and unethical behavior. Tests performed at Lush revealed that Drufo could contain a carcinogen and could be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but Lush did not see these risks as important enough to take any precautionary measures. Finally, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in the field of agriculture, who has spent years working to understand the harmful effects of prolonged exposure to chemicals like Drufo. He spoke to the devastating consequences of rushing a product to the market without first ensuring its safety. His study was executed over the span of many years, and its results are clear. Using Lush Fertilizer exponentially increases the risks of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These witnesses alone established by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer was negligent and is liable for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lush Fertilizer also called 3 witnesses today, none of whom provided a plausible defense or justification for why it didn't bake its fertilizer or include a proper warning on its label. You heard from Blake Doncourt, who testified that Lush made a conscious decision not to bake its fertilizer. You saw Exhibit 8, which showed you that Lush still would have made over $1 million in profits each year, even if it had baked its fertilizer to remove any risk that it was carcinogenic. Mr. Doncourt told you that Lush refused to bake its products because doing so would have been simply overkill. You also heard from Skylar Weirs, whose testimony was baseless at best and dangerously unreliable at worst. Ms. Weirs testified today with the same expertise she has in the other topics she's devoted her time to, such as flat earth theory and UFOs. Ms. Weirs has no relevant credentials and she relied on unverifiable research. Finally, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who explicitly admitted that he has a financial bias in the outcome of this case. He could not tell you that Drufo is not carcinogenic because he does not know that to be true himself. Dr. Williams' entire testimony today was a cop-out, an avoidance of the question at hand. All of the defense witnesses testified in the name of profiteering off of a company that continues to exploit its consumers, but their testimony did nothing to dismantle the ironclad proof that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for my client's life-altering disease and should have included an appropriate warning on its label. We have met our burden and we ask you to find Lush Fertilizer liable. You will now hear from the defense. Listen closely and pay attention to whether Lush's attorney answers any of our unresolved questions and whether they take any responsibility for its actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing argument for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, may it please the court, my name is Christopher Dudzik, and I represent Lush Fertilizer, the defendant in this case. We appreciate your attention throughout this matter, and we thank you for listening to both sides equally, as you promised you would do during jury selection. Today, you have heard my opposing counsel's and Dakota Weir's negligence claim against Lush Fertilizer. The defense offers every condolence to Dakota for this horrible, horrible disease, but we completely disagree with his claim. We remind you that Dakota Weirs believes the sole cause of his cancer was Lush's failure to properly warn users about the usage of its product. You have seen that the plaintiff's claims and statements are full of neglect and grave irresponsibility. Now, after hearing all of the evidence from both sides, it is apparent that the only reasonable verdict to be returned is that of not liable. A great thing to keep in mind all throughout life is that irresponsibility has grave consequences. And this case is the perfect example of that. Dakota Weirs testified to great negligence in that he refused to wear any protective clothing, and Havens as a company was irresponsible when they did not enforce upon their employees the following of the safety guidelines on Lush's label. No evidence has proven that Drufo or Lush caused Dakota's condition. And today you heard from the plaintiff himself, Dakota Weirs. I want to try to paint a picture of Dakota Weirs' statement. He testified that the sole cause of his development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma is due to his use of Lush fertilizer. However, he admitted that he was told to cover his face and wear long clothes when he worked with the chemicals. He chose comfortability when he was specifically warned and told by his boss to wear protective clothing. Although it may have been hot, Lush isn't responsible for enforcing the guidelines they set. For example, a car manufacturing company wouldn't be responsible for the injuries that a driver of one of their cars suffered if that driver wasn't wearing a seatbelt. The adult knew they should wear one, but chose comfort over safety and reason. The same has happened with Dakota Weirs. He knew the proper safety procedures and still chose to neglect them. He also testified to his usage and exposure to many other chemicals and lawn care products. Instead of suing Lush, Dakota Weirs should bring Havens Landscaping to court for these damages. No other employees or workers from Havens or any other occupation and company have come forth within this case with any sort of medical conditions or speculations of such. It seems that Drufo's appearance in this case is plainly circumstantial. Today you've heard from Casey Rogers, a hardly qualified expert, to talk about the sort of cancer that we have here. He performed a study and that is now the groundwork for the plaintiff's entire case. He turned humans into rats in this study, and bias was clear. No other scientist or scientific journal has replicated or even peer-reviewed this study. Such an improperly conducted study shouldn't be allowed to hold such weight in this case. You also heard from the lead product developer for Terra's Greenery, Carson Durst. He testified that he worked his way up fast within Lush, but he also testified that Lush hired him right after college at ASU. He also testified that he had such a close relationship with the Doncourts all throughout his life. You must ask if there was any sort of relationship bias here when he was hired. He spoke of his role in regards to the development of Drufo, and he said that he had speculation of foul play within Lush. He had these major suspicions for months, but he made absolutely no attempt to contact any sort of healthcare official, government agency, or law enforcement officer. He wasn't qualified for his high-ranking position and therefore was put on a performance improvement plan. Before he was even fired from Lush Fertilizer, he was looking for a job with Lush's competitor. Why? Because he knew he wasn't qualified and realized the people around him were starting to find that out. When he was fired, he said himself he was seething with the Doncourts and with Lush. He even said that he's still upset for his supposed mistreatment. He currently works for Terra's Greenery, Lush's biggest competitor, but due to their confidentiality agreement, he has no way to retaliate towards Lush Fertilizer or the Doncourts. This case is the perfect opportunity for him to take a stance against the people he was and still is so upset with, while also convicting his biggest competitor. Whether it's negligence or improper conduct of studies, this case is overflowing with irresponsibility from the side of the plaintiff. The plaintiff is responsible to prove it is more likely than not that Lush Fertilizer causes cancer. They needed to provide a preponderance of evidence that Lush is at fault for the allegations brought forth today. Seeing that how that was not done, and based on all of the evidence brought forth, the only reasonable verdict to be returned is that of not liable. Thank you.
Okay. Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
Instead of coming up here and accepting responsibility for its actions, Lush Fertilizer tried to have you believe that Dakota Weirs, a high school kid, is responsible for his own cancer. When you return to the jury room to deliberate, look closely at Exhibit 1, the label Lush Fertilizer used on its product. When you do so, examine the ethics of lying by omission. Nowhere on this label does it say what Lush knew about its product, that it may cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So I ask, how can the innocent person who used it unknowingly be put at fault? Study after study has shown the dangers of exposure to Drufo, yet Lush has continually failed to take responsibility for customer safety in order to put themselves in a position for ultimate monetary gain. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen today more than enough evidence that Lush Fertilizer is singularly responsible for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and should have included an appropriate warning on its label. We request that you hold Lush Fertilizer accountable for its actions and ensure that it cannot infringe upon the safety of any other consumers with a verdict for the plaintiff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the case is concluded. Congratulations. We're being done with one more. You guys did a really great job. Are there any of the judges who would like to give any quick feedback? I know that we're the only thing standing between you all and lunch, but I think sometimes a little bit of feedback is helpful.
I can make comments, Your Honor.
That'd be great.
Okay. I thought you all did an excellent job. You looked really good. My name's Jill Phipps. I'm a family law attorney in Fort Collins, and I also have coached mock trial for 25 years. My team didn't make it to state this year, so I'm judging you guys. So I've been going through this case since November, like all of you, so I know the case really well. One comment I would make is one of the things we're asked to judge on is the theme of your case. Is it clear, and do you follow through on it? Plaintiff's team, I still don't know what your theme was. So going forward, I would make that a little clearer. Defense, irresponsibility has grave consequences. I thought that was a good theme, and you followed it through the whole way through. Witnesses, I think you all did a great job. You all were really good at portraying your roles. Attorneys, I would just caution you. A lot of you used ums and ands between sentences. Watch that. Don't address witnesses by first names. A few of you did that. All your voir dires were really good. You know, we all know in mock trial that you're not going to, succeed on those because the courts are going to let the experts testify as experts. But I thought you all did a really good job on your voir dires. I do think a lot of you missed a lot of objections, especially relevant objections. There were a whole bunch of them in this case. So maybe throw in a few more of those. Just a caution to all of you. I know if you're an attorney, you can use notes. It looks better if you don't. And those of you who were reading instead of doing it by memory, you think we can't see it on Zoom, but we could tell. So just so you know that. I think those are my questions. Overall, I think you all did a really good job.
Thanks, Jill. Stacy?
I agree with Jill. I'm Stacy Campbell. I'm a commercial litigator here in Denver. I think you guys did great. I think one of the only little pieces of advice I could give you guys is speed. Slow down a little bit. I think that's always an issue because you're keeping in mind your time. But that's where practice comes in. Practice and under timed conditions, see how you're doing and what you need to cut out if you do need to cut something out. Other than that, I think you guys did well. I do agree with Jill. I think the defense, your theme was easier to follow. So plaintiffs, maybe just tighten up a little bit more around your theme next time. But for the most part, you guys did good.
Thanks, Stacy. Michaela?
I thought you guys did a great job. The only criticism really is that kind of echoing what Jill said with the relevance objections. I think you all missed quite a bit there. And then also, what was my note here? Yes, yeah, I could definitely tell when people were reading off their scripts as well, with the witnesses in particular, but overall, everything was really well done.
Mr. Sweetser.
Judge Brown, you all did a great job. I'm Dan Sweetser. I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Colorado and Denver Bar Associations, but practiced real estate transactions and litigation for about 33 years before that, and spent way too much time with Judge Brown here along the way. But you all did a great job. Witnesses in particular, I thought it was wonderful watching you all portrayed yourselves very well. Watch the reading. And as far as the speed goes, yes, that is, as Stacy said, that's something we all suffer through as litigators. There's not a judge in the metro area who hasn't told me to slow down at some point in my career, but be careful with it because any one of you who wants to go on to practice law, just keep that in mind if you go through litigation. One last thing, I probably shouldn't tell you my scoring, but I gave both teams a 10 on professionalism. It was very, very well done. And that going forward, whether you're law or anything else, is key to your careers. So keep that in mind. It's really, really important. You did very, very well. I loved the way the timekeepers worked with each other at the end there when there was that little glitch. Jason bringing it up was a great idea. So keep that in mind going forward. That's where you get the highest scores.
And one last thing I would say, just piggybacking on Jill, with the when I took debate in high school, this always stuck with me from my teacher. I just said too, but instead of saying just pause, take a break. No, see, there I'm doing it again. But it's very easy to say it, but you're not rushing. I think we just feel like, oh, I got to get something out there. I have to fill the silence. No, just take a break. We're on your time. You're leading it. So especially with questions, when you're questioning a witness, it's really your show at that point. So take your time, pause.
Yeah. And I agree with everything that the other judges have said. I really think it was super cool that the timekeeper called out an error and made sure that we got it right. That was just, I'm not scoring, but I would have given everyone high marks just because of that. That was exactly how it's done. I've had trials in real life where an exhibit gets lost from the other side and they can't find it. I'll open up my notebook and I'll hand it to them because that's just how you practice. So really great job. Couple little things. I did mock trial all the way through law school, so I'm very familiar with the process. And this applies to both sides. When you're reading an exhibit, one, make sure you're reading it so that you can place your emphasis on it. Never cede control over to the witness. Like, that's just not a thing. Like, that's one of the beauties of being an attorney, is that you get to be a control freak, and that's where it really shines. As you're reading through the exhibit, if there's important language, slow down and pause and highlight the words that are going to kill the other side. Super important. Very persuasive that way too. And also keep in mind, in our society, because we're used to like commercials every 7 to 10 minutes, if you're into an exhibit that's a commercial break, make sure that you're helping them understand what you're talking about. So slow down at all points. And then the other one, this is just a little nick, but don't thank the judge after an objection if you've won or lost, because in my mind, and I've seen this happen a lot in real life too, it's kind of misleading to the jury. Just move on. Those are really all the comments I have, but it's really, really, really enjoyable. This is my third round, and you guys just crushed it on both sides. So you should feel really good about that. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Okay. Hearing none. Really great job, guys. Enjoy yourselves, and hopefully we'll see you guys all in real courtrooms in a few years.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.